Thanks everybody for joining us. I want to just start off by introducing myself. My name is Dan Garfield. I hope you all can see my screen. I'm the Chief Evangelist of Codefresh. We are a CI/CD platform designed for Kubernetes, designed for modern cloud-native applications. And that's why Helm is such an important topic for us, and Kubernetes is such an important topic for us because it's really critical to most of our users' workflows. So we're going to be sharing a little bit about that today. I also want to introduce Steve Lasker. We've brought in a couple of rock stars to help us with this today. Just checking the chat. Hopefully people can see my screen. Looks like people are saying, yeah, looks like we're good. Now you guys all saw that I was searching for cat pictures. So Steve, go ahead and let's unmute you and get your video started. And Josh, you can go ahead and start your video as well. And to introduce Steve, whoops, back up. Steve is joining us all the way from Azure land, where he runs Azure Container Registry and knows tons about asset management and works with huge enterprises every day. Steve, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody, and I did have to open the windows bright to try to get some sun in Seattle here. So I am a program manager for the container registries at Microsoft for ACR, MCR. We've got a great team. I've been focusing on the container lifecycle management from deployments, image security to OS and framework packaging. And working with the Codefresh guys have just been fantastic. They really kind of get the container ecosystem. Everybody from Dan to Raziel to Josh is just huge in the Helm space. So we've been able to learn a lot and be able to implement Helm Charts in ACR, which we feel is kind of a native extension to the work we're doing.
By the way, Steve, I noticed you're repping your Helm shirt.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. The whole team has them. I meant to get a picture of the whole team wearing them. So
perfect.
Hopefully everybody can get one as well.
And then Josh Delitsky is one of our senior software engineers. He's a Helm core contributor, creator of Chart Museum, and very well known in the Helm space especially, and was nice enough to join us and help basically run all of the demo and put it all together. So Josh, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm an engineer at Codefresh. I'm also one of the maintainers of the Helm organization. So I've been working on recently the changes that Helm 3 is going to see related to working with repositories. So actually working with Steve quite a bit and some other folks to get that working well. At Codefresh, working on expanding Helm and Kubernetes support, support for open source projects, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Josh. Yeah, and if you do want to learn more about Helm 3, I believe we posted a video about it that Taryn can throw in a link in where Josh actually presented all about what's happening in Helm 3. So maybe we can share that in the chat. Moving into the agenda, we're going to do a quick intro into Helm. For those that are new, for those that are old salts on it, won't be too long, so stick around. For those that don't know much about Helm, this will serve as a little bit of a primer. Then we're going to talk about the role that Helm repositories play in the process, and we'll show some workflows with Helm, how that works, and then go ahead and do a demo. That demo, by the way, is hosted in an open source repository. So the goal is that after this webinar, you can grab that demo, you can go and replicate this all yourself in just a few minutes. Josh has made that really easy to do, as well as some of the tooling that you're going to see to make that happen. You could have this whole workflow set up and running very, very quickly. So we encourage you to do that, and we'll share the links at the end. As always, as you have questions, use the Q&A button, and we're going to answer those questions mostly towards the end. Keep them coming. It keeps those presentations really lively and gives you the information that you're looking for. So first off, intro to Helm. So Helm is the package manager for Kubernetes. And when we say package manager, we mean that in the traditional sense, like if you're using Homebrew, if you're using Aptitude, if you're using Ruby gems and things like that, it's a package manager where you can say, I want this software, and it relies on this other software, and the system knows how to go and get it and install it and maintain it. But it's for cloud applications. It's for Kubernetes applications. So that means if I need SQL, I can go and grab it. Now, Helm actually has quite a few jobs beyond that make it particularly useful for developing your own Kubernetes applications. And what we find is that most companies who adopt Kubernetes in production end up bringing in Helm. And I believe that the percentages of companies that have Kubernetes in production and the percentages that have Helm are identical. So there's a little bit of overlap there, but we find that Helm is enormously useful when you start to do this sort of stuff in production. You start to do this stuff at scale. It's the package manager for Kubernetes. So the jobs that Helm has, one, it helps with templating. So you don't have to write Kubernetes YAML over and over again. You can use one YAML, you can use different values, and you can render out the configuration that you need. Rendered configuration, by the way, much more reliable than manually done configuration. In fact, 80% of outages that happen are because of configuration changes, not because of code changes. Those configuration changes being generated by your CI/CD system with Helm, gonna be a lot more reliable than somebody fat fingers a configuration change, and now we've got a problem on our hands. So templating is really—
people with fat fingers. Are you just calling them out?
80%.
80% of people have fat fingers.
80% of outages are triggered because of configuration changes, not because of code changes. I think this is in the Google SRE handbook, is where I got that stat. But the other component is that Helm offers reliable deployments. So if you have old stuff, when you're updating your Kubernetes application, you have old things that might need to be removed. You have new things that need to be added. You have versions that need to be updated. Doing it as a Helm package means you can't forget anything. It's all included. It also has some managed dependencies. So you say my application, it needs SQL. The package manager knows how to go and get it and install it on your Kubernetes cluster and provide it to your application. Also, deployment history. So you can actually roll back your application to previous states. Enormously useful, especially when you go and start trying to figure out how to fix something. Sometimes providing a fix and then pushing it through Git, maybe that takes an hour. You can't have downtime in the meantime. Roll back immediately, then go and do your fix, roll forward. You're rocking and rolling. You have minimal downtime. And then the last component that we're going to talk about today is that you can package your application with all the configuration, all the images that you're using. You can have it all provided in a simple, easy to use package that's portable. You can use it on local development. You can use it in staging. You can use it in production. And this is the component that we're going to talk most about today for Helm workflows. The other things like templating, reliable deployments. We have other webinars, other videos on that that I encourage you to see. Just go to codefresh.io/events, and you can see lots of other videos about these topics. We're going to be focused on the Helm workflow that's provided because of the packaging. And to do that, we're going to marry together our Git with our CI/CD, with our container registries, our Helm repositories. And to explain that model, basically, we have Git that we're making code changes into. This has to make sync. This syncs with Docker to create Docker images, right? And this has to work in tandem with our Helm packages, which is keeping the configuration and the images updated as we make changes. So these are the systems that we're keeping in sync. We're going to do this with CI/CD pipelines and some additional tooling, and we're going to use and leverage Azure Container Registry for this as well. So to explain the Helm workflow, first we're going to look at the Docker workflow. Most of you are probably familiar with the Docker workflow, so this should be somewhat familiar. Typically with the Docker workflow, you're making commits in Git, and usually in Codefresh, our users, every commit they make, they build a Docker image. Now, is that Docker image ready for production? Probably not. So we put it inside a developer registry. This is a Docker registry that's dedicated for images that are not necessarily ready for prime time. So this is enormously valuable for me as a developer because I can work on changes, make commits, I can get a Docker image, and then I can run tests on it, I can pull it down and debug it, I can continue to work on it, but I know what the output is. It's an artifact that could potentially be promoted up and used in production. So that's a developer registry. It's a wild west. It's full of stuff that works, stuff that doesn't work. It's for debugging, it's for testing, and it's a mess. You don't want to deploy straight from that registry because you don't know necessarily that you can't guarantee that you always get the image that you want. That's why we have a production registry where we do some sort of extra validation. This could be a manual review. This could be a security review. It could be all of your tests are signed and recorded as being on the image, and so you know that it's valid. And it can only get into that production registry through an automated system that may have a manual step, such as a code review or a manual push, but it should never, ever, don't ever build a Docker image locally on your machine and push it into production registry. That is a recipe for disaster. I don't know what's on your local machine. I don't know if it's secure. I don't know if you checked in your code changes. Don't ever do it. If you're doing it right now, stop it and pay attention to the webinar because you need to stop doing that. So production registry should be the blessed, most amazing, glorious, creme de la creme images that are only meant for production. That's why it exists. So it doesn't go into production registry unless it's going to production. That's the way it works. So the dev registry becomes the playground. We can do whatever we want. Production registry, it's serious. We're not messing around. This is going to production. This is the Docker work. Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
That's a way to shame them. I think the other aspect also that you're touching on is we don't rebuild for each environment, right? We're building, going to the dev registry, configuration is extracted, and then when everything's validated, then I'm just moving that image from one registry to another. So you're not rebuilding it to go into the other one. You've already validated the image, you're just gonna move it. In ACR, we have an import capability, so you can actually, you don't have to pull it and push it again. You just tell the other registry to import it. But the main point there is, don't rebuild, take the thing you built and tested and just promote it.
Yeah, and keep it in sync with Git, right? So you should be able to look at an image and know exactly what commits are inside of that image. This is something we do inside of the Codefresh platform. We show that. So that's pretty critical, right? Now, this Docker workflow this is the standard way of working with Docker images in the industry today. Most of you are already familiar with it. If you're not, here you go. Here's the introduction. Now, this same workflow is actually very well translated to Helm and Kubernetes packages. It's basically the same flow. We make a Git commit. We build our image and our Helm package. We store it in a developer registry. When we're ready, we move it up to a production registry. Now it's deployed into production. And again, you probably have some extra validation that happens between your dev registry and your production registry that says this thing is ready to go. So this is the workflow that we're going to be showing today. But again, Helm, is it for a single application? Well, it's actually for a microservice sort of application that has lots of different components. So the demo that we put together today actually has 2 different microservices that we're going to be managing in a single, in a workflow where we move these things up to production. So this is where the Azure Container Registry becomes particularly useful because it supports both Docker images and Helm charts in the same repository.
Yeah, and the key there is we want to think of those assets together so that you can actually share a common authentication model. Part of another angle of what Dan's talking about is in the dev registry, there's a lot of people that have access to that registry for both push and pull. Not something you want in a production registry. You really want to lock it down. So here you can promote your charts and your images from one registry into another and use the same authentication model to be able to pull images and charts and do deployments.
And same security model too, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you give a service principal that has just pull rights and it'll be able to pull the images and pull the charts.
Now, one of the benefits of this model that I like from Azure is that you can actually support geofencing, georeplication really well. It's a little bit of a detour, but I did want to highlight it. So maybe you can go a little bit deeper into that, Steve. Whoops.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing there is because we're just treating charts as another artifact in the registry, we get to take advantage of all the infrastructure we already have there, right? We work across all the services in Azure to make sure that they can do auth to the registry. Well, if you do auth to the registry to get images, you can get your charts. By the fact that we actually are geo-replicating the assets, then if you have a local deployment in different continents or even different parts of the same country, images are large, right? We always want those images to be network close so that the reliability and the performance is going to be fast to local. If you've got 500 nodes in a region pulling images or doing charts, you want those 500 pulls to happen local. Likewise, you want the chart to be local to that environment. So you push an image to a registry, ACR, if you've clicked on the map and deployed it to multiple regions, not only will the images go, but the charts will go as well. And then we have actually regionalized webhooks that will tell you when the charts and the images arrive in that region, and you can trigger your deployments based on that. But that's a more complicated thing. That's just an example of by putting charts in the registry is you get to ride all the benefits of the underlying platform.
Yeah, and to kind of highlight that process, basically it means that through our CI/CD process, we're pushing images and charts into a region such as North America or Europe or whatever, and that triggers local deployment in that region. So the point of this it's not necessarily what we're going to demonstrate today, but the point of it is to show how this thing scales and is actually being used by very large enterprises today. And it's one of the great benefits of having Helm as the package, which is portable, right? You can port it to all these regions, and they basically become these local caches that then deploy out into production. And you can pull it down on your machine and you can work with it. You can put it into a staging environment. You can throw it up. You can, if you have disaster recovery, Helm is the package that you can actually throw back up and recover with. So it shows just the power of that idea and how we extend it up into an enterprise realm. So we're getting into the demo now. You can find this repo at github.com/codefreshio/Azure Helm webinar. You can grab the link here, and Taryn's going to put it into the chat, so you can just click and grab it. And Josh, do you want to introduce us to the workflow that we're going to be doing?
Sure, absolutely. I'll put a link here in the chat to the source code for this, and I'll also show it a bit in the demo. But what we have here, if you look at the bottom, you have steps 1A and 1B. These are two separate microservices that are being developed by two different teams, let's say. And each of them at the end of the pipeline produces a Docker image, and it's going to push that image to ACR. And Codefresh has all sorts of easy ways to kind of connect your account up to ACR and connect Azure Kubernetes clusters, AKS clusters. But basically, what we're going to do is every time a commit comes in for service A, we're going to build the Docker image, run a test on the Docker image to verify that that it does what we want it to do. And then based on the commit that's coming in, if we're updating the version of the Docker image, what we're going to actually do is push that up to the ACR registry. And then finally, once we've pushed a new version to ACR of either service A or service B, what we're going to do is actually commit back to the Git repo, updating the reference to that image for service A or service B in the Helm chart, triggering yet another pipeline that actually builds the Helm chart. And you can see that step number 2 here. So building the Helm chart, we're going to package it up, run tests on it. didn't get to go into it, but there's an amazing chart testing tool, an official Helm project called Helm/chart testing. Definitely worth checking out. It runs as a Docker image. And then same story here is we're going to release the chart up to ACR. And what's great about ACR is it not only stores the images, like Steve was saying, but it also stores charts as well. So we can use the single one-time authentication against this and push both images and charts. And if we're determining that we're releasing a new version of the chart, we're going to actually trigger the deployment, and you can see that in step 3. And in step 3, at this point, we have absolutely no reliance on the source code repo at all. If several years down the line we want to install this chart, it's stored in ACR, and we can download it from there and install it into our cluster. In this case, an AKS cluster that's also in Azure. And with this, we basically have a full continuous delivery flow on every change in the repo. That's about it on the explanation of the diagram. And I will go ahead and share my screen.
I was on mute, but I was just going to say this demo goes to 11.
Yeah, it's a really important demo application. I've called it Rainbow Kitten Surprise, which is dedicated to a band I recently discovered. But what the application does is it's called Rainbow Kitten Surprise, and the features that it provides is giving you a surprise color and a surprise kitten on the screen. And so right now,
funny your kitten reference now that you tied it to a band. I mean, I got to say you upped it a little bit. You're no longer discriminating against dogs. You made this amazing.
Listen, I'm actually a dog person, but I know the internet's into cats, so I decided to go down this road. But it's not.
And I do want to request from the audience: this is a startup idea, so please, friend DA, nobody steal this. This is the exit plan from after Codefresh is Rainbow Kitten Surprise. It's actually a new realm we're going to get into, hopefully with Microsoft. Going to be very profitable. Nobody steal the idea, even though you do have all of the source code to actually go and replicate this in 5 minutes.
It's a trust factor. It's all trust.
Yeah. So, yeah. So the application right now is a bit broken though, because it's really only showing the same color and the same kitten, and the way that this is actually working is I have a simple front end that is making 2 AJAX requests. And this is what this is doing is I have a Helm chart here, Rainbow Kitten Surprise Helm chart. And in templates ingress, I have an ingress controller that's saying anything at API cats, I'm going to send to my cat service. And the cat service has its own application code. Under services, cat service. It's a little Python server. And you can see here's the bug. Basically, we're just using this URL every single time and sending it back to the client. So you can see that response here. The color API very similar, although equally important service. And here you could see it's sending the same color every single time.
You know, and as an improvement to Rainbow Kitty Surprise, we should write some tests that validate that we're getting an equal distribution of colors and kitties. But that's in the retrospective.
That's the part two. That's the Istio. That's part two. But basically, let's say, all right, I'm tired of this bland purple color. I'm ready to be surprised by the color. So what I can do is I have a repo. This is a clone of the repo. And I will fix this bug. Hold on. So I've made a code change, but in this diagram going back, I'm only going to push this image if I actually update a version file, and that is this file right here. So let's say this is going to be Docker image 070.
Did Josh?
Single step.
There we go.
Was I dropping out?
I don't know if it was just the, yeah. So you froze at 070. I think that was your frozen release. That was your special snowflake.
Okay, well, great.
Important there.
Great, because we're not changing that version. Sorry. Anyway, so here's the Codefresh pipeline that's actually going to execute. That's actually going to execute upon push. And this could definitely be a little bit more robust, but we're setting a variable here called push Docker. And what push Docker is just basically a true or false. Did this version file change in the commit? And one of the other interesting things is that you can notice that this one single Git repo is actually managing the Helm chart as well as the two services, the cat service and the color service. And this is due to Codefresh's ability to work with mono repos and actually trigger, this is not what I'm looking for. You can actually trigger, so here's the cat service definition. I can say, I only want to run this trigger if anything under services cat service has changed. So I'm actually using the same repo for 2 microservices and a Helm chart, but by using this advanced trigger method, we're able to separate commits as they're coming in. So
that's really nice, because otherwise you're either forced to do multiple repos because you don't want too much noise and too many commits. That's a nice addition.
Exactly. Yeah. So it really just depends. It comes down to permissions levels and kind of your company's style of doing things. But this is definitely a good approach using the mono repo. But let's see. So I've updated the application, bumped the version. And now I've pushed that. That will trigger the build color service pipeline. And you can see that's initializing here. And you can see the commit has just come into my Git repo. So here's our change. Here's our new version. And we wait for it. It's cloning the repo at the exact commit that the trigger launched. Here's where we're actually determining whether that version file change for the color service and that we should push the Docker image, considering that the tests all pass. So here's the build stage. Like Dan was mentioning earlier, everything that's built through Codefresh is cached on Codefresh. So you can see that it actually says rcfcr.io here. We have an internal registry that you can basically use for staging purposes and testing purposes. And then when you're ready, after the image has passed certain validations, like this test step, then we're actually going to say push the Docker image to ACR, and that is very easy to do once your ACR registry is connected. You basically just reference it as ACR or whatever you've added it to your Codefresh account. So from here, this actually made a commit back to the repo, and we can look at that really quick. And you can see it says robot here. What that did is actually bumped the version of the chart, bumped the minor version. So we're saying there's a new Docker image coming in. This means that we have a new feature or something. There's obviously more robust ways to take care of this, but every time we're bumping the minor version. And then that values file, which represents the defaults for a Helm chart, it used to be pointing at the old version of the image, 062. Now we're pointing to 070. And because this commit came in, we have another pipeline called build Helm chart. And very similar to the other one, we have a push Helm check that's true or false whether or not the chart YAML changed. Then we're going to build it, test it, and push it up to ACR. And Codefresh has a special kind of Docker image that we can easily just put some environment variables in, like action push, and automatically push it up to a registry. And then finally, if we pushed a Helm chart, we're going to actually remotely execute a third pipeline, stage number 3, which is the actual deployment of the application. So this is almost done. You can see that we've pushed the chart to our ACR repo here. And yeah, at the top it says, did the condition pass for this step? And it says, yes, true is true. We decided at this stage that we should push Helm. And so this should launch now a third pipeline deploy chart. And what this will actually do is grab that new version of the chart, which I forget is version 0.18.2, and deploy it. So right now you can see Codefresh has the ability to view your Helm releases. So right now you can see that we have a release called AZ Demo, revision 71, and it's using this 0.17.2 version of the chart. Once that deployment occurs, and we're doing a little bit of retry here. As we wait for the repository index to get that latest version of the chart.
This is the models where you're pushing the chart to the registry. Now, is this in the dev registry or the prod registry? Where are you at this point?
So the previous step we were looking at was the build Helm chart pipeline, right? And at this point is when we're actually pushing it up to ACR.
Cool.
At which point it should be immediately available, but I think it takes maybe a couple seconds to be available in the index, in the repo index. So, yep, we finally deployed, and you can see the color pods are starting to restart. And if I go back to releases, this should say Rainbow Kitten Surprise 018.2. And now if I come back to my deployed application, you can see I can trigger many visual delights. But I'm kind of getting tired of this this little.
He's not as cute anymore.
I don't like that cat anymore. So I'm going to pull down the changes since I had that robot commit. And let's go ahead and fix. Let's go ahead and fix that cat service. So before it looks like we were just taking the first thing in this array. We really want to use this random.choice. And Dan, I don't know if you had an image to add here. I saw you were searching images of cats earlier.
Oh no, you just got me on the topic of cats. That was for personal reasons, personal research. That was doing those searches.
Completely unrelated.
So wait, yeah, you just bumped the version up?
I bumped the version and I fixed the bug, and I'm now randomly selecting a cat from that array. So
now in this demo, we're not really demonstrating Git flow, so we're not dealing with pull requests. That's normally how you actually do this, and lots of demos that show that. The point here is to show how you can basically manage the versions of Helm Charts and your code and your Docker images all simultaneously.
right, yeah. A whole nother topic is Codefresh's trigger abilities. We actually recently added pull request common added trigger. So what this means is you can, owners of the repo, when a PR comes in, you can say, I only, like if one of the owners of the repo says /test as the comment, it will actually go and trigger that build. So yeah, it does not need to be just on the push event. You can do it when a pull request open, and you can link several different, you can add unlimited number of pipelines per repository and add different triggers here. But yeah, for the sake of example and showing just the beauty of Codefresh and Azure working together, we're just pushing right to master. Yes.
Also, one other thing that I would mention while this is building, this model here of using actually a separate deploy pipeline versus the other steps, this is particularly useful in situations where you maybe want to have a different team in charge of when things are deployed. And that deploy pipeline can be controlled by a separate team. It's like a black box for you. You send it and you say, hey, please deploy this. And that deploy pipeline can say, hey, does this meet all the criteria? Does it meet all the muster? Do we believe in it too? We will go ahead and deploy it. And you as a separate team won't have access to that. So this is an extra layer of security you can add in. Actually a very popular model for especially larger companies.
Right, and yeah, and that's, go ahead, Steve.
Well, I would say in addition, it could be different regions because I'm taking the same app and deploying it to different regions. So you get different webhooks from different regions, say, okay, now that region's ready to be deployed. But it also might be multiple teams using the same app with slightly different configuration, right? If a couple of different teams are using, the same time tracking program or the same expense reporting app, but each of them have their own install, there's lots of reasons you want to kind of separate your builds and your deployment, and it's great to see that supported.
Yeah, and you basically can boil all that complexity down for you as an end user into what really looks like a single step, even though it's actually, a whole pipeline.
Yeah, and on that topic, the deploy pipeline, you can see like it actually, here you can see if a pipeline is connected to a repo, you can see it actually, it's completely separated from the repository and the triggers coming in for that. So here we can actually just come in here and click build manually, and at any time, modify the, for example, kube context and deploy it into a different cluster, different namespace.
Oh yeah, and you can pass those things in as variables.
Exactly.
You can actually have the one pipeline that does all of those things. But Josh, actually, while this is building, do you want to show the Helm Charts view so we can actually see where these charts have been pushed to?
Sure, yeah, definitely. So, yeah, so I was talking earlier about the native integrations with Azure. So we have the ability where you can actually do a one-click authentication flow, and from here you can actually list your subscriptions in your account and the different ACR registries here. So I've already added Josh Tests, but I can maybe put a different name here, Josh Tests X, and this will actually be added to my Codefresh account. And
that means we can reference it inside of a pipeline by name, and we don't have to do we don't have to manage the secrets, the authentication, all that stuff. We just say,
right,
push into this Helm repository, this Docker repo. It knows how to do it.
Right, and you can even go as far as to we have all this nice stuff to be able to say like install, and you can actually from the UI pick your cluster, your namespace, and install the chart right here, and we take care of all the auth stuff. Similarly,
charts that are in that repo or that in that registry. You're listing the charts that are in that registry, and you can choose the deployment.
Yeah. Yep. So these are actually identical. They just have different references, but yeah, you can see that old version.
Now, once it's in this repo, we can use it. We're using it in our automated systems, but you could use it manually too. You could actually just go ahead, hit install, throw it in a new environment. You're rocking and rolling and doing something. We actually have seen like sales teams using this to spin up demo instances of their software for like a sales meeting, which isn't a use case that we imagined, but it's pretty cool to see that it can go to that level.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, you can even create new namespaces from this view.
But let's maybe we should get back where we
sure.
we went on some tangents. A lot of fun. Looks like it's been deployed.
Yeah, it got all the way through again. This time it was the cat service.
I want to see a different kitten.
You will see. But yeah, you can see the commit came in now, the automated commit, and we've actually bumped the cat image tag and values YAML, changed the chart version, pushed it to ACR, and then this final pipeline, we're actually doing the deployment of that chart. And let's see if it worked. Now we are having.
Now we're in Cat Town. I'm telling you, Josh, we add machine learning to this, and this is $40 million seed round.
Let's take it offline because I've got my own.
I say we deal everybody in.
If you benefit by joining the webinar
today. To the webinar today, you have 1% stake.
Well, we do need to get into the questions. This is a fantastic demo, Josh. Thank you. Taryn, if you don't mind starting the slides. There are a couple of key takeaways that we want to do, and then we have a number of questions we want to get through. So key takeaway number one, Helm workflows are very similar to Docker workflows. We can treat them in the same way. We should have a dev registry and a production registry. Number two, Azure Container Registry supports both of those things, which makes it very convenient for us at Codefresh to recommend Azure Container Registry to people because it integrates so well. And that's the third takeaway, which is a little bit self-promoting, but Codefresh and Azure work really, really well together to support this Helm workflow. So hopefully that is very clear and is very helpful. We're going to get into some of the questions now. And as we do that, Taryn, if you want to go to the next slide, we do encourage you to go ahead and create a free account on codefresh.io. Go create a free Azure Container Registry. Go replicate this demo, and you can do it all for free and see exactly how it works. So let's get into the questions. First question comes from Ramaguram. He says, we found it hard to customize the apps available in Helm repositories. For example, it's not a straightforward process to add OAuth 2 authentication configuration to Grafana Helm chart. On the other hand, it's relatively easy to do when using one of GitHub's repository YAML-based Grafana Kubernetes deployments. Can you comment on this aspect?
Rama, I'm not sure if you're specifically talking about the Grafana, our like OAuth on the Grafana app itself. It could be definitely a shortcoming in the chart itself versus the Kubernetes YAMLs that you've come across. I'm not. This could also be asking. Maybe you can clarify, but you could also be asking about OAuth on Helm repos. And that's actually an area that I'm working with Steve on to make Helm repos look more similar to Docker registries. So it would share all the different.
I think it's actually a larger question just about like the quality of Helm charts,
Okay.
which certainly does vary. So for example, if you want to use Istio, their flows are all designed for you to use Helm. They really encourage you to use Helm. Everything is streamlined for Helm. Other software packages, your mileage may vary. Maybe they've optimized it for Helm. Maybe it was just community-led effort. So that is definitely something you have to pay attention to.
Yeah, and at some point, customizing things to the level that you need with YAML templating is just not, it can't meet all the different cases. And one of the really interesting things coming in Helm 3 is that instead of managing these things as YAML templates, they're going to be actually miniature Lua scripts. So you could actually inject whatever OAuth things you're doing using kind of like a scripting language versus this massive YAML template that won't accept your values for the specific thing you're trying to do.
And in that same vein, even before Helm 3 right now, I would actually recommend taking that Grafana Kubernetes configuration and just putting it into a Helm chart that you have saved as part of your organization with the configuration that you want, because creating a Helm chart is really easy. I mean, it's like writing a Docker file. I mean, it's pretty easy to create a Helm chart. You throw in your template, you template out the values, and you're basically off to the races. So I would actually encourage you maybe to go that route, or to suggest to the Grafana maintainers, hey, this is a common option that people really should have, and they can add it in. Another question from Oliver, can you compare Codefresh with Spinnaker? There seem to be some similarities. Absolutely. We actually have a whole blog post about it. Just search for Codefresh versus Spinnaker. We can throw the link into the chat here, and you can get the full rundown there. The long and short of it is that Spinnaker is a pure CD tool. Codefresh is a CI and CD tool. And while you can potentially use Codefresh with Spinnaker, there's not really a reason to, especially if you're doing Kubernetes, if you're doing Istio, if you're doing Helm, if you're doing Docker. Those cases are really, really well covered with Codefresh. If you're doing VMs, there's maybe some strengths there with Spinnaker, but I'll throw that link into the chat. We also got another question here, and it was a great question, Oliver, and feel free, love to talk to you one-on-one afterwards as well on that. There's a question from Byron. He says, is there a way to update several namespaces that use the same Helm chart in an automated way? Well, Josh, I think we would just take your pipeline and we would just pass in, we would run that, we would have an automated step that ran that step several times with the different namespaces.
Yeah, so there's several options. You could actually, in the pipeline itself, deploy to the multiple namespaces that you know you're always going to deploy to, or leave it simple, and then you actually would trigger multiple builds with different parameters from the build chart pipeline. So instead of just doing the one trigger of deploy, you're doing three triggers, for example.
Yeah, and I would add that you can, never mind, I just lost it. It was a great comment. We all missed out. The next question was from Avioli. He says, in the demo, I believe we pushed to a developer registry. Can you show the steps on how to promote from developer registry to prod registry? Josh, you mind sharing your screen and showing that? And I remember my comment, which is that if you're working between different namespaces, when you use Codefresh's built-in Helm deploy step, it will actually manage the secrets for you. So you always need to create these image pull secrets. You need to create one from the Azure Registry, one from maybe the Codefresh Registry, whatever. It will automatically do that for you, so you don't have to manage it.
Yeah, so kind of getting into that, it's really just however you define your Codefresh pipeline. So I put a link in here to this file, but this is in the Azure Helm webinar repo under .codefresh. So this step is special to Codefresh type build. And what this actually does is builds the image and also caches it on our system. So if you come to the images tab here, you can see I have this cat service image. It's actually available at 2 different locations. It's at r.cfcr.io, which is our internal registry. And by doing this, we're actually able to save annotations on our end, quality control type stuff, code coverage percentage, just so we have the audit ability. And we can also like inspect the labels in the image, all sorts of really interesting stuff. But then you can also see that it's available in this AzureCR.io registry as well. And the actual promotion is just really whenever you're pushing that image. So you can say my candidate is something that's sitting in the internal Codefresh registry, and you reference it by the step name that built it. So
I think he's asking about the Helm package promotion.
I lost my.
When we promote.
I lost the question.
When we promote the Helm package to the repository.
Yeah, so actually, that actually is a point in this demo right here at build chart. We're not doing it, but we do have a built-in
well, yeah, you have the push chart step right here in line 30, right? Which shows.
Right. This is actually the promotion piece here. But unlike the image, we're not automatically caching that on our internal repo. That is a great idea, but that can definitely be achieved by just doing exactly this command up here, and instead of referencing the ACR repo, we could reference the in-house Codefresh Chart Museum repo.
Yeah, and you can find that in our documentation.
Yeah.
I am going to launch our final poll to collect feedback as we take these last 2 questions here. It's very important to us that we do a good job with these things, and so this poll is particularly valuable. Please answer it. We really appreciate the feedback, and it helps us make good content like this. Byron asks, is there a way to integrate Azure DevOps Git repositories with Codefresh? That's something that you can do today, but it requires a little bit of more elbow grease than our GitHub integration does today. But that is something that we are working on to make easier. If you are interested in doing it, it is very much possible. It requires just a little bit of extra work. We have to basically create a new step, which is creating custom steps in Codefresh is very easy, but we create a custom step which will actually pull the code in. And then we can add the webhooks. So it's not quite streamlined today, but it is very much possible. So good question on that. And then there was a final question that I wanted to address while people are taking this poll, which was, what are the pros and cons of using Helm versus Terraform versus just YAML? Steve, I thought you gave a great answer. Maybe you could reiterate that for the audience.
Yeah, I mean, so when you're deploying things specific to Kubernetes, Helm charts are a great way because Helm is very specific to Kube, right? Here's all the images I'm deploying. Here's how I want to hook them up, secrets and so forth. When you're deploying, but more than likely, your containers are referencing things that are not containers. Storage is always a good debate on whether storage should be in containers or not. Secrets, other services. By using Terraform, you could actually provision a larger set of things, and which one of the things Terraform can take is a Helm chart as well. So I don't view them as competitive, I view them as additive.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, use Terraform to describe your Kubernetes cluster. how it should be created, right? Use Helm to describe your Kubernetes applications. And again, you can pass that into Terraform. We do actually have some demos using Terraform as well. I don't know if we posted those yet. So watch our blog, watch our Twitter for that. Twitter, we're just Codefresh. So with that, we're going to go ahead and come to a close. Please do, if you enjoyed this, we're going to post the link to the video and the project files and all that stuff on our blog and on Twitter. Please share it, send it to colleagues, send it to friends, post it on Twitter, post it to your Snapchat, text it to your mom. She's into Helm. Everybody knows it. So just get those links out there, share them, and we really appreciate it. It encourages us to do this more often. So thank you very much. And with that, Steve, Josh, I give you the last word.
Looking for the pull request for the dogs version of Rainbow Dogs. But thanks everybody for joining. It's great work. It's just great talking to folks and getting feedback on what it is they're doing next. We try to stay ahead of the curve a little bit. Obviously, there's people ahead of us and behind and catching up. We would love to get the feedback on what it is you need more from what we can provide in Azure to help you be more productive. So thank you, Dan. Thank you for Josh for doing all the hard work.
For sure.
Josh, final word?
Yep. Ditto to all of that. Yeah, thanks for having me. Hope you enjoyed the demo. Yeah, look out for the dog version, part 2.
I think Rainbow Dog and Rainbow Kitty are going to be like Adidas and Nike.
Yeah, we're. I can't wait for part 2. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.